During a career counseling meeting, Yukina learns that she is currently failing at Tateyama International High School. Although determined to visit Mars someday after school, Yukina and Mika go to the United Nations Carob Laboratory, a research facility where their parents work. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defense detects a meteorite heading for Japan that divides between Toyama and Nagano as it enters the atmosphere. Minoru shows Yukina a large black cube and a gigantic geoframe found while excavating for the Kiribai Dam 60 years ago. Suddenly, one of the meteorite fragments crashes near the United Nations Kirby Laboratory. A huge rose-colored geoframe called the Headless and small geoframes called Cactuses appear. The research facility dispatches shield-like geoframes called Dwarves to battle the Cactuses, while Director Hiromi authorizes pilot Tom and navigator Lu Shinmei and the Gauze 1 to fight the Headless. Yukina opens the cube after touching a glowing red panel, revealing Kanazuki, a naked man who kneels and calls her princess. He relentlessly defeats one of the cactuses that enters the building, while Tom and Shinmei manage to defeat the Headless outside. Chemistry is then subdued by 6 security guards. In the past, Princess Yukihime inquires about people who live in foreign lands beyond the sea. In the present, a huge geoframe called the Yellow Crab lands on the coast and heads towards the shore, accompanied by many cactuses. Major Arthur Graham detects the landing of more hostile geoframes in other countries worldwide. Hiromi goes with Dr. Jules Hausen to interrogate Kanazuki, but Kanazuki manages to escape and take Yukina. But soon realizes she is not the princess. He calls upon the cube, which transports them to the underground storage keeping the gigantic geoframe called the Black Relic. The cube docks with the Black Relic, which Kanazuki activates as the pilot and uses to smash out of the facility with Yukina on board as the navigator. The defense forces attack the Yellow Crab with little effect, while Hiromi orders the defense forces not to attack the Black Relic. Kanazuki and Yukina attack the Yellow Crab, but they become surrounded by 4 sword-wielding geoframes called Ogres. After Kanazuki and Yukina defeat the Ogres, they prepare to destroy the Yellow Crab. But a tractor beam in the sky takes it up to an alien mothership instead. Yukina says that nothing is known about the Black Relic other than Kanazuki naming it Kora Makoro. 60 years ago, the cube and the Black Relic were discovered near the Kirami Dam, where the United Nations built a large research facility to study them. In the present, Graham and Rita Farah confirm that the cactuses are unmanned. Despite the Black Relic immobilized and Kanazuki being captured by the United Nations forces, he escapes custody again until Sophie tackles him before 2 security guards activate a shock collar around his neck. Akushi talks to Kanazuki, learning that he was just a soldier assigned to fight against the mythical invaders called Ogres. Kanazuki later uses a diversion by Koharu Shirahani to escape yet again and takes her to the mountains. However, a cactus appears and abducts Koharu. Kanazuki returns to the research facility and calls upon the cube, taking Yukina on board as they pursue. Although Kanazuki's sword breaks during the battle, Tom and Shinmei fortunately arrive to destroy the cactus and rescue Koharu. Kanazuki finally accepts that he is now in the future upon seeing a cliff split in half during a battle in the past. Kanazuki has dinner with Yukina, Koharu, and Nakushi, trying modern rice and curry for the first time. The Ministry of Defense analyzes that 6 giant geoframes have landed across the world, but only Japan was able to defeat one. The geoframes appear to be searching for something rather than attacking. Later, Yukina takes Kanazuki to the Tateyama Mall, where he marvels at the strange new world they encountered. 2 reporters remember that Yukina's father, Takedo Shirahani, advocated a bizarre theory before his disappearance about the legend of ogres in association with aliens. After evading the reporters and returning home, Yukina shows Kanazuki a notebook written by Takedo about the ogres, including a passage on the extermination of the Worshipa clan by a mysterious unknown power. The notebook also contains a candid blurred image that Kanazuki recognizes as the Uber that attacked him and Yukihime 450 years ago. Yukina goes to school, only to be horrified when Kanazuki has been enrolled as a student 40 hours ago. Kanazuki and Yukina were stationed by the United Nations Kirby Laboratory, where they are the only ones who can operate the Black Relics since it implanted them with nanomachine channels. Kanazuki painted a rough sketch of an ogre that the United Nations can use for identification. Graham introduced Kanazuki and Yukina, Tom, Shinmei, Sophie, and Sebastian. In the present, Kanazuki struggles with modern school life, while Paula and Jiro transport the Black Relic to Tateyama. The North American Aerospace Defense Command detects another object launched from the alien mothership heading for Tateyama. As 3 hostile geoframes land near the town, the Gauss crew prepare to be mobilized, while Kanazuki and Yukina reach the Black Relic in the impending battle. While inside the Black Relic at the Tateyama airport, Kanazuki and Yukina duel against the Yellow Crab, but the 2 headlesses attack the Black Relic from behind. Meanwhile, Judai and Ryota leave the school to approach the battle site as the citizens are evacuating. The Gauss crew deploy their units and arrive to engage the headlesses, managing to destroy them. Kanazuki and Yukina struggle to defeat the Yellow Crab due to its high-output gravity shield, but they finally manage to destroy it. A pilot encased in armor emerges from the wreckage of the Yellow Crab and removes his helmet, surprisingly having a human appearance. He announces himself as Hito, a border reform officer for the extraterrestrial organization Dorg. Then, Hito asks Kanazuki, wielder of the large humanoid geoframe Grongol, why he betrayed Dorg. Lastly, Hito detonates the Yellow Crab with him inside, causing a devastating explosion following Hito's death. In the Yellow Crab, the United Nations Kurobe laboratory assesses that the geophonies that landed in various parts of the world are confirmed to be related to the Black Relic of 450 years ago. Konosuke mentions that the Black Relic was stolen by Yukihime, and he still seeks revenge for the destruction of the Washima clan. While on the way to school, Konosuke and Yukina learn from Carlos that Jundei and Ryota have gone missing on the Ifadorg spaceship. The Jessen Rico Company people, dressed in battle armor, discuss their strategy of gathering pieces of the legendary Pivot Stone. They send Earth a demanding message for the return of the Black Relic. After having an argument with Hiromi, Yukina leaves the house the next morning. Paula and Jiro discover that the Black Relic can absorb nearby mass in order to repair itself. As Hiromi and Graham decide that it is best not to hand over the Black Relic to Aphid Dork, Hiromi receives a call from Koharu that Yukima is gone. It turns out that Yukina is secretly sulking at Mecha's house. Meanwhile, Jundei and Ryota return to school unharmed, but they are scolded by Takakuma for live-streaming the battle at the airport. Elizabeth Beth Butler informs Graham that a geoframe called the Long Arm was discovered in North America and has returned to the Dorg spaceship with an unknown object. After returning home from school, Konosuke overhears from Yakashi's phone call that Yukina went to Kurowashi Valley and goes after her on horseback. While Yukina is searching for the Washima clan's castle, she is attacked by a cactus. A small blue geoframe called the Liddy stops and destroys the cactus while Yukina falls unconscious. With no reply from Earth, Ifador officer Fusanani is dispatched to Earth's surface. The Long Arm and 4 headlesses advance towards the Kurobe Dam. The Gauss crew is on standby. Yukina awakes inside a secret base full of old appliances, chanting upon a bloodstained notebook written by Takahito about the destruction of the Washima clan. She thinks after seeing the Liddy once again. Jundei and Ryota later find Yukina at a bus stock shelter, but Konosuke also arrives at the scene. After being retrieved by the defense forces, Konosuke and Yukina deploy in the Black Relic and attack the Long Arm and the 4 headlesses. However, they are surrounded and caught in a tractor beam that starts to pull them towards the Dork spaceship. The defense forces fire missiles at the hostile geoframes, which enables the Black Relic to break free. The Gauss crew arrives and defeats the headlesses while Konosuke and Yukina fight and defeat the Long Arm. Frustrating emerges from the Long Arm and surrenders. Minoru, Paula, and Jiro examine Fusanani's sword while Hiromi and Hazen scan Fusanani's body, finding out that both are similar to those of Konosuke. Frustrani tells Dunham and Kingsley, specialists from the Extraterrestrial Research Division, that he is a border reform officer affiliated with Dorg's Jizen Rico Company. Frustranani says that the aim of the Guessing Rico Company is to bring prosperity to savage planets. The objects they seek are fragments of the Pivot Stone that was broken when an advanced team was wiped out 450 years ago by the Black Relic, whose wielder seemingly betrayed them. Donovan Kingsley questions Konosuke about what happened 450 years ago, but he mentions that the Obers destroyed the Washiba clan's castle and he then fought alongside Yukim in the Black Relic before her inevitable death. He denies being part of the Dorg's advanced team, but Dunham and Kingsley remain suspicious. Meanwhile, frustrating escapes from the security guards and remotely summons the Long Arm. The Longer makes its way towards the United Nations Keral Bay laboratory and pierces a main power line with its sword. The Gauze crew deploys and intercepts the Long Arm outside. Meanwhile, Fusunani kidnaps Yukina and follows her to the excavation site where he recognizes a pivot stone fragment. After they head to the deployment bridge near the Black Relic, Kenoshi confronts Fusunani in battle. Konosuke accuses Fusunani of being Sato of the Washiba clan, and Fusani accuses Konosuke of being a traitor and having his memories altered. As Kenoshi stabs Fusunani in the chest, Fusunani falls to his death, which then causes the Long Arm to collapse. Donovan Kingsley cannot discern whether Konosuke or Fusunani was telling the truth about their past. Yukina invites Konosuke to hike with her to the secret base where she saw her father's notebook, but all they find is a giant crater on the Iffy Dorg spaceship. The Jessen Rico Company retrieves another pivot stone fragment from Earth, but they are frustrated at their slow progress of collecting all the fragments. Plus, they have yet to locate the important keystone. After Konosuke and Yukina undergo intense educational studies in the classroom, they train in the shooting range, though Konosuke uses a sword as a substitute. In the meantime, the United Nations Kuroba Laboratory experiments with gravity control for Tom and Shenmei, and the Gauze want to walk on water with limited success. By the end of summer training camp, Yukina eventually improves her fitness. Konosuke is given back his sword and is unshackled from his shot collar. The Black Relic and the two Gauze units fight to drive a geoframe called the Spider, controlled by Ifidorf officer Murasa, from the urban area. The Spider is stabbed during battle, being forced to retreat and recover. Iffy Dork officer Mueta attends the festival cosplay competition in her battle armor. Moira suddenly appears on stage and stabs Konosuke in the chest with her sword. Konosuke is stunned to see that Moira's face looks just like Yukihime. Before Moira can kill the badly wounded Konosuke, she is stopped by a masked and cloaked demon. In the meantime, Takakuma treats the wounds of Konosuke. Moira evades the attack by the demon and calls for her geoframe called the Medusa, which launches from the Ifidorg spaceship. Once inside the Medusa, she is immediately attacked by the Gauze crew and their units, but she manages to escape. Back at the United Nations Kurobo laboratory, Graham briefs Konosuke and Yukina on the current situation. Kenoshi recovers enough to pilot the Black Relic with Yukina reluctantly behind as the navigator. Konosuke and Yukina confront Mueta in the Medusa, whom Konosuke still believes is Yukim. Then Murasa and the Spider rise to join the fight but seem to be uncoordinated with Moira. However, the Gauze crew arrives as well and engages in battle against Murasa. The Black Relic and the Gauze units fight as a team and damage the Spider, prompting Mueta and Murasa to retreat back to the Ifidorg spaceship. Konosuke is taken back to the United Nations Kurobel laboratory for medical treatment following the battle against Mueta and Murasa. At school, the students show concern to Yukina about Konosuke's condition. Meanwhile, Konosuke has a past vision of Yukihime and the demon conferring about him. When he survived, Helzen is impressed to see that Konosuke has recovered from his near-fatal wounds. Through tissue regeneration, Graham informs the Gauze crew that he will prepare single-seater Gauze units, meaning that Shenmei and Sebastian are no longer navigators on the Ifidorg spaceship. The Gauze and Rico Company debate their next course of action, but Moira and Murasa seek to redeem themselves and secretly dispatch to Earth. Mueta and Murasa arrive at Kurobi Dam using atmospheric entry suits. Graham begins trial simulations on single-seater Gauze units to increase their capacity to deal with enemy geoframes. Moira and Murasa gain entry inside the United Nations Kurobe laboratory and disguise themselves as miners. They capture Konosuke, who still believes that Moira is Yukihime, but Mueta denies knowing him. They find the excavation site with the final fragments of the pivot stone. Confronted by the defense forces, Konosuke tries to defend Moira. However, Sophie says that he is foolish, and she vows to stay at the research facility. As they are about to leave, Murasa stabs Mueta so that she can take sole credit for the discovery. Mueta jumps from the dam wall into the rushing waters below. The Jessen Rico Company notices that Ifidor officer Emusa has descended again to Earth in order to find the 3 remaining pivot stones, including the keystone. After viewing footage of Murasa stabbing Mueta at the Kurobi Dam, Konosuke storms out, and Yukina follows him. Hiromi waits for replacement parts to arrive for the gauze units. Konosuke, Yukina, and the gauze crew debate whether or not Mueta is really Yukima. Afterwards, Konosuke and Yukina deploy the Black Relic to search for Mueta in the river. However, Ifador officer Yoruba arrives in a flying geoframe called the Bluebird to check on his comrades, also shooting down a cargo aircraft carrying the replacement parts. The cargo aircraft crew managed to offload the replacement parts before crash landing. Konosuke and Yukina save the crew from crashing into the research facility. Yoruba finds Murasa, who lies that Moira has already died, but he goes to find Moira. He attacks the Black Relic in the air, but the demon attaches a winged geoframe called the Crow to the Black Relic to help Konosuke and Yukina. Because of Konosuke's mistrust of Obers, the demon departs but promises to assist him if needed. Yukina says that the Bluebird flies at an incredible speed, while the pilot who saves them had a familiar voice. The next day, the wounded Mueta takes refuge in the hot spring, hoping to aid her recovery. After getting lost, Konosuke and Yukina arrive at the Sing hot spring. They stumble upon Mueta, and the defense forces take her into custody. Just then, a cactus appears, captures Yukina, and escapes back into orbit. Konosuke says that the pivot stone is what the enemy is after. The pivot stone is a new artifact discovered deep inside the United Nations Kurobe laboratory. Interrogation of a captive confirmed that the pivot stone was issued 450 years ago, but its function is unknown. The cactus returns to the Ifadorg spaceship, carrying Yukina in a bio-conveyance capsule. The Jessen Rico company believes that Yukina is Mueta. At the United Nations Kurobe laboratory, Hassan concludes that Yukina and Moira share the same mitochondrial DNA, and Yukina was therefore abducted by mistake. Graham relieves Sophie of duties. Later on, Sophie sees some writing appear on the ground outside the research facility, asking if she wants to learn the truth about Obers. Hazen informs Kuromi that only Konosuke's blood sample will be able to heal Mueta. When Sophie returns to her house, the demon is waiting for her and introduces himself as Zell. He explains that he is neither an Ober nor an Earthling. He confirms that he is an enemy of Ifadorg. Konosuke begs Mueta to navigate the Black Relic to the Ifadorg spaceship with him as the pilot, to which she agrees but cannot guarantee his return. As they prepare to leave in the Black Relic, they see a recorded message from Yukihime imploring her ancestors to fight the Obers and protect the Washima clan. Moira then wonders more about her unknown past. After escaping captivity, Yukina realizes that she is inside the Ifadorg spaceship, but she encounters Murasa, who believes that Yukina is Mueta. After evading Murasa, Yukina manages to access Ifadorg's virtual database and learns about their plans of assembling the pivot stone. Yukina is further shocked to discover a head that resembles Yukima. Meanwhile, Konosuke and Mueta leave the research facility in the Black Relic. At Sophie's house, Zell reveals to Sophie that Ifadorg aims for planet domination. He wants to avenge his compatriots slaughtered on his conquered planet. Before Sebastian charges inside, Zell leaves Sophie with a flash drive letter and requests retrieval to the Ifadorg spaceship. He reports to the Jessen Rico company. When Konosuke is detected on board, Mueta is accused of being a traitor. Konosuke and Mueta reunite with Yukina, leaving the Ifadorg spaceship in their geoframes. But they are pulled away from orbit. Zell intercepts and safely carries the Black Relic and the Medusa to Earth. The research facility receives a message that the Ifadorg spaceship is descending towards the planet's surface. Yukina says that the Crow is a winged mech that saved her once again and does not seem to be her enemy. The Black Relic and the Medusa return to Earth, assisted by Zell. But Mueta is consequently arrested. Zell states that Yukihime died 450 years ago. Moira is a replica based on her genetic information. He further explains that Ifadorg creates clones of the lifeforms that they conquer and embeds false memories in them to be loyal vanguards. He also tells Yukina that her father, Takahito, was a close friend. While citizens are evacuating, the Ifadorg spaceship launches multiple geoframes, including the Rockhead, the Bluebird, and the Spider. Zell attaches the Crow to the Black Relic so Konosuke and Yukina can confront Yoruba. Tong, Shinmei, and Sebastian engage Moira, Murasa, and the Headlesses on the ground using single-seater gauze units. As the battle grows fierce and the research facility soon breached by the Headlesses, the Ifadorg spaceship drops cactuses, which release electronic parasites that take control of some of the staff. Sophie gets her friends to rescue Muetta from an overturned van while Sebastian sacrifices himself in an attempt to destroy the spider. Konosuke and Yukina, in the Black Relic, pick up Tom and his Gauze 1, and they depart from the overrun research facility. Konosuke, Yukina, as well as the close-knit students and the remaining staff who evacuated from the research facility, retreat to the high school, which has become the new base of operations. The entire region is completely isolated from the rest of the world because of the barrier created by Ifadorg. When Konosuke, Yukina, and Muetta stop by Yakashi's home to visit Hiromi and Koharu, Zell appears and explains how he met and befriended Takahito many years ago. Shortly before Takahito died from a sudden avalanche, meanwhile, Ifador manages to excavate the pivot stone from Kurobi Dam's underground excavation site, using the mind-controlled staff as slaves. The pivot stone draws in surrounding heat, icing the area and provoking a snowstorm over Kurobi Dam. Moira, having finally accepted the fact that she is a replica of false memories, escapes from the base of operations. Yukina collapses in the snow while searching for Moira. However, Moira finds Yukina taking refuge in a cabin before Konosuke reaches them. Luetta reveals that Ifadorg plans to use the pivot stone to create a wormhole between Earth and its homeland, enabling a correctional fleet to storm the planet and subjugate it. In the base of operations, Zell and the research facility staff consider their limited options concerning the pivot stone while the barrier is intact. As Konosuke, Yukina, and Muetta enjoy in the classroom, Moira then explains about the correctional fleet's upcoming storming through a wormhole. Meanwhile, the Jessenrico company extracts the completed pivot stone and ascends it above the Ifadorg spaceship. Yukina says that the Ifadorg spaceship is where the border reform officers live, is pretty big, and is filled with strange machines. It is Ifadorg's standard amphibious spaceship loaded with 90 spacecraft, including the commander craft. Moira decides to fight alongside the humans, while Graham asks Sophie to pilot the Gauze 1. Konosuke and Yukina promised to protect each other. The Black Relic, the Medusa, the Gauze 1, and the Crow engage the Bluebird and the Spider. Meanwhile, Graham and Hiromi lead a small group of troops to recapture the United Nations Coral Laboratory from the cactuses, managing to find the unconscious, mind-controlled staff and reboot the control room. Sophie reunites with Sebastian, revealed to still be alive, as he takes control of the Gauze 2. Konosuke and Yukina defeat Yoruba, while Muetta defeats Murasa. Lethal, leader of the Jessenrico company, descends and unites his geoframe with Moira's rockhead to create the giant geoframe called the Ogre. However, it is defeated executing Yukina's plan of using simultaneous attacks. Lethal returns to the Ifadorg spaceship but ends up mortally wounded by Zell and revealed to be a clone from Zell's race. Zell uses a parasite to get Lethal to shut down the wormhole. The wounded Lethal reveals to Zell, Konosuke, Muetta, and Hiromiya that Ifadorg will send a larger correctional fleet that would reach Earth in 224 rotational periods. Lethal says that Ifadorg controls 85% of Zell's planet, which gives Zell hope that there may be a resistance movement. The Ifadorg invasion force also received communication that some planets subjugated by them are uniting. Moira, confirmed to be an artificial creation, learns that all border reform officers are disposed of once their job is done. Graham fears that an arms race may start after the failed invasion, while Hazen and Dunham also fear that the immortal Ifadorg clones like Konosuke and Muetta may pose a threat to humanity. Zell tells Konosuke, Yukina, and Muetta about when he came to Earth with others of his race to find allies and fight Ifadorg but only found Konosuke and Yukimi alive. The two were trained to control the captured Black Relic and defeated Ifadorg, but only Konosuke and Zell survived the battle. In the new climate, suspicion Hazen has Muetta fitted with a shock collar, and Konosuke is treated as a threat. Hinashuk resolves to travel to Zell's planet with Zell and Muetta to fight Ifadorg. Konosuke entrusts Rhina with Yukina before leaving. As Yukina tells her classmates that Konosuke plans to help Zell and Muetta liberate Zell's planet from Ifadorg, her classmates join her in her mission to follow Konosuke outside the research facility. Mika and Carlos enlist the help of reporters as a distraction for Graham. With both the Medusa and the Black Relic locked inside the research facility, Sebastian guides Yukina, Sophie, and Jundae to the Medusa. Yukina and Jundae then use the Medusa to retrieve the black relic for Konosuke in the Ifadorg spaceship. Zell activates the pivot stone and opens the Ifadorg portal. Tom unsuccessfully tries to stop Konosuke, Mueta, and Zell before they depart through the portal. However, Yukina is unable to reach the portal and is left behind. 5 years later, the Toyama Kitakido spaceport is open. Yukina, Sophie, and Sebastian board a spaceship with a strike force and depart for the binary star system She-1 Sagittarii to assist Konosuke and Zell in the fight against Ifadorg. The end. If you enjoyed